Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Songwriting Simplified with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, here in the southeast corner of Scotland. I hope everybody is doing well. I'm doing alright. I'm on vacation time at the moment, and spent the first couple of days, 2 or 3 days here at home. Had some things to sort out here. But we're away down to England tomorrow. So, and I'm away until Monday. So I'm not going to be here for a Sunday Night Live show. So there's not going to be a Sunday Night Live this Sunday. Okay, so don't come to the channel expecting there to be one, because there won't be one. Okay, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be away. It's our wedding anniversary. It's our 19th wedding anniversary this year. But that's not why we're going away. We're going away down to England because it's my father's memorial concert on Sunday. And for those of you who don't know, but pretty much everybody that's in chat just now knows that my dad died on January 9th this year. So his funeral was in February, and there were 2 memorial concerts scheduled. One has already happened, which I was not at, but this one I will be at, and I will be playing as well. I'm going to be playing with a bunch of musicians who are absolutely outstanding, who some of them are flying in from the United States for this, so it's going to be absolutely amazing. I'm going to get to play with some absolutely first-rate, top draw, internationally acclaimed session musicians. It's going to be fantastic. Really, really looking forward to it. And it's basically people that my dad has played with over his very, very long, nearly 70-year career. So I'm really, really looking forward to it. It's going to be hopefully a good night, and hopefully we will raise some more money for the British Heart Foundation and also for the hospital where he was looked after when he died. So that's what it's going to be in aid of, fundamentally. But also just a great opportunity for musicians from all around the world to get together, because they all share one thing in common, which is that they are either friends with or they have played with my dad, or both. So, as I say, we've got people coming in from all over the world. We've got people coming in from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and the United States as well. So it's very, very cool. Are we still honeymooning? Well, after 19 years, not really. But if you're asking, are we still very much in love? Oh, yes, most definitely. That's something that it does change. You know, those first couple of years, everything is tremendously exciting and tremendously new, and it's great. And then that particular side of the relationship kind of changes and matures and grows, and it becomes something else, and which is just as good. Unfortunately, what I think happens with a lot of marriages, because as a pastor, I do a decent amount of marriage counseling, is a lot of people, when the relationship moves into that next phase, they think that they have fallen out in love. They've fallen out of love with that person, when actually 98% of the time they haven't. It's just the relationship has changed. Anyway, this is Songwriting Simplified. This is not Marriage Counseling Simplified. Daryl's been married for 50 years. Well, congratulations to you, my friend. On 2 things. First, being married for 50 years. And secondly, having not been murdered by your wife. That's a double whammy of blessings and achievements. So well done to you. All right, so we have a first. I should make note of this. We have a first on any live show that I have ever done on this channel. For the very first time ever, we have a 3-way tie for the first in the chat. And that is Kyle, Dwayne, and Brett all in at exactly the same time. That's amazing. That's never happened before. For the most part, it is usually Billy Morgan who is first in, but not today. Today, it's Kyle, Dwayne, and Brett for a three-way tie for being first in. So that's amazing. Congratulations to the three of you for doing that for the very first time. And I've been doing Sunday Night Live, in particular, Sunday Night Live. I've been doing that show since 2017, I think, is when I started doing it. And then I started doing Songwriting Simplified on my own, I think maybe 3 years ago. 2, maybe 3 years ago. Wow, has it been that long? I think it has been something in the region of 2 or 3 years since I took over the show from co-hosting it with Jonny Geib on his old channel. Jonny's great. Jonny and I have not fallen out or anything. He and I are still very, 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 very good friends. Our schedules have just changed a little bit over the years. Jonny changed jobs, which meant he was no longer available on Wednesdays to do the show. So I ended up taking it over. Now, I would like, when he has some time off scheduled, when he has some PTO time scheduled, I would like to get him back on the show as a guest and do a Songwriting Simplified like we used to do it. So that would be pretty cool to be able to get him in on that. So that's something I want to do. And I also want to try and get Joe Gilder back in as a guest as well. Had him on the show, I think, last year. Would love to get him back on again. And when we talked about it initially, a year ago, he was very up for being back on the show. He said, hey, yes, certainly would like to be back on the show anytime. So it's just a case of getting our schedules to match. Now, my show doesn't change, and he knows that. He knows that my show is always at the same time. He's not always available at the same time, unfortunately, which is why I've not been able to get him back in. But I do want to get him back in. The other person I want to get back in as a guest to talk all things composition and writing for games, in particular, video games in particular, has got to be Rich Cresswell, although his job has also changed. So that may present still a little bit of a challenge to be able to get him back in here, more than it used to be of a challenge. So, but yes, those are 3 definite guests I want to get back in on the show, and try and have like a bit more of a revolving door of guests in here, people who are, you know, songwriters, arrangers, composers. I'll even extend it to beat makers as well, because, you know, beat making is a form of some songwriting for sure. So, and anybody that's involved in musicology and music theory, I would like to get in here as well. So, I may be talking to some colleagues from the university as well, see if I can get some of those people in here, to talk about, you know, a bit more of the music theory side of things. I like talking about that, obviously, but I want to open the door to hearing other people talk about it too. So, who else do we have here? Apart from the 3-way tie, we also have Daryl Harrison here, who I mentioned earlier. We've got Keith here, and we've got Don Oliver. We got Stephen Wilson. Who else do we have? We got JW here as well. And I think that's it so far. And Carl says, and we never had a fight that I won. Yeah. And that's in his 45 years of marriage with his wife. So that's awesome. You guys that have been married super duper long like that, 45 and 50 years, kudos to you guys. Absolutely, kudos to you guys. And I'm sure there is definitely at least 1 or 2 secrets to the longevity. I have found a few, but like I said, this is not really marriage counseling show particularly. This is Songwriting Simplified. And in this show, we talk about all things to do with songwriting, composing, arranging, We talk about harmony. We talk about melody. We talk about rhythm. We talk about time signatures, key signatures, music theory. We talk all about that kind of stuff. So if you have questions on any of that stuff, get them into the chat and let's get the conversation going. JW is in his car in Argentina, which is fabulous. Argentina is a beautiful country. I have never been there, but I know people that have been there. In fact, some friends of mine, many years ago, maybe about 20 or 25 years ago, were in Argentina. So probably around about 2001, 2002, were in Argentina because they were doing a tour of the Americas with their band, with their contemporary jazz band. So, and they told me that Argentina is absolutely fabulous. They told me it was a wonderful country. So, I would love to go. And maybe the next time they are on tour, maybe I'll try and blag getting on the tour some way, shape, or form. Maybe I could write some charts for them or something. Anything that would get me on the tour whereby I can get a free trip around the Americas. That would be awesome. Because I've only been so far. The last I counted, I have been to 12 of the 50 states. I would love to visit all 50 states. That's something I would love to do. But yes, I've only been to 12 of the 50 states. And my favorite states are New York, not in any particular order. New York, Washington. Love Washington State. What a beautiful place. Iowa. I've been to Iowa. Very nice. Farmland, if you like farmland. And I kind of do like farmland. It's kind of nice. Where else have I been? I've been to Pennsylvania. I have been to Illinois, the great state of Illinois. And I have been to Tennessee. Yeah, I've been to quite a few. Those are the ones that really stick out from memory of the places that I have been to. But yeah, I think probably Washington, Illinois, and New York would be my favorites states that I have been to because, yes, you've got the big cities, but you do actually have nice countryside as well. In particularly Illinois and Washington. So, and yes, I've been to Washington, D.C. as well. Which was awesome, actually. When I was playing a gig in New York, I took a wee trip. It wasn't a wee trip, it was a huge trip to Washington. But it was fun. It was very, very fun. So there we go. That's my trips to the United States. And I would love to go back, but I don't see myself going back anytime soon for a variety of reasons. Not all of them political. Yes, I do need to see Oregon and Colorado. My parents have been to both of those states. Yes, I would love to go back to both. Colorado because you've got the Rockies, you've got volcanoes up there, and you've got Oregon as well. Beautiful state of Oregon. I would love to go to. Yeah, there are plenty of other states that I would love to go to. I would love to go to places like Cincinnati. Love to go to places like Seattle, San Francisco, Florida. I'd love to go to, I'd love to go to see the Johnson Space Station is one of the things that is on my bucket list to do. Just Bob is here. Hello, Just Bob. Just Bob usually gets us kickstarted with a really great question, so I'm actually waiting for him to actually kickstart us with a really great question, because that tends to open up a whole bunch of other conversation as well. So, Yellowstone is, yes, the Yellowstone Caldera, Yellowstone National Park. I would love to go there as well. Yeah, I am actually a bit of a nerd about volcanoes. I love volcanoes. They are spectacular. Paul Morgan is here as well, and who else do I see? I think that's it. I think that's everybody. So yeah, so I'm going to be away for the remainder of this week and into next week. So I will be back for Songwriting Simplified next week. Okay, so no Sunday Night Live this week because it is my dad's memorial concert, which I'm really looking forward to. Denver in Colorado is nice. Yeah. Estes Park outside Denver. Is that Estes? Is that how you say it? Estes? I'm assuming it's Estes. I don't know. I'm Scottish. I'm going to pronounce American places incorrectly because I'm Scottish. Although there are Scottish place names in the United States as well as in Canada as well. Like there is another Edinburgh in Canada. So, which of course is a great, let's just face it. Let's just face facts. It is the Edinburgh in Canada is probably just as great as the Edinburgh here in the home country of Scotland. It's owned by the YMCA. Okay, interesting. And that brings to mind a certain song which I'm not going to sing. Rasta Vibes Studio is here. Down in the Caribbean, if I'm not mistaken. So yes, so sing them a song. Yeah, I won't be singing them that song, okay? Unless I reharmonize it bebop style. Oh, both E's are short sounding. Okay. Estes. Okay. Got it. All right. Okay. Songwriting questions. Let's get those going. So I hope you guys are beginning to think about the songwriting challenges that we have for 2026. We have already done the Christmas one at the end of last year, and we didn't do an Easter one because we don't really do Easter ones. So the next songwriting challenge that will be coming up, hopefully coming up, I'm not saying definitely will, it kind of depends on a bunch of things, but the next one is going to be the Halloween songwriting challenge that we've run for a few years. Hopefully we will run that again this year. We didn't get quite as many entries this year as we did last. So I would like there to be a few more entries. If we're going to keep these challenges going, I would like there to be more entries. And also, prizes are great. Prizes are good. But really, this should be about the contest and should be about the whole getting the song done and getting it into the workspace for everybody to listen to. That's what this should be about. It really shouldn't be about prizes. Although, prizes are cool. Everybody loves free gear. Everybody loves a free subscription to Studio Pro Plus. Get it. Totally get that. Totally understand that. But really, I want to get this whole challenges thing to be about testing yourself to write music that you wouldn't ordinarily write with tools that you wouldn't ordinarily use so that you can stretch yourself so that you can achieve the goal of having written a piece of music using these given tools, using this given brief, so you can chalk that up to something that you have achieved and that you can say, I have written a song using X scale. I have written a song using X orchestration or instrumentation, that you've done this. You can chalk that up to songwriting experience. And then you can draw upon that experience in the future or not. You can maybe decide, hey, actually, I really enjoyed this process so much. I want to pursue this a little bit more as a genre or as a harmonic approach, whatever it might be that we have as the challenge. So the briefs are going to get a little bit more interesting, maybe not quite so prescriptive as in you must use this scale. They're going to just be a little bit more interesting, that you actually have to fulfill the brief to the best of your ability, using the skills and the understanding that you've gained over the years of watching this show and all the things that we have given you through other challenges. So, To that point, I think what we will do with the Halloween challenge is we will make it a bit more open and a bit more free for all, in as much as you can use any of the scales, any of the techniques, and any of the parameters that we have done in previous challenges for this year's Halloween challenge. Now, we're a long way away from that. This is April, so we've got several months. So you can go back and you can think about, you can look through your songs that you did on previous Halloween challenges, and you can find notes that you may have made, scales and stuff like that. And you can mix them together. You can use the B-Locrian mode for one section. You can use a completely different scale for another. You can use instrumentation from one challenge and mix that with instrumentation from another. You can do all of that. Okay, so we're going to make it much more an open thing, but the fundamental brief will still be to scare the shit out of me. Okay, I want to be genuinely scared this time. I'm not saying I wasn't last time, but I really, really want to be scared. Okay, and I want you to achieve that with the music. Visuals are great. Don't mind it if you want to add a video to it as well. Great. For those of you that like making videos, make a video as well. But the video's an extra thing. We're not going to be judging video. It's going to be judged on the music alone. All right? So I want to be able to close my eyes and listen to your music and still be scared. Okay? So that's something for you to be thinking about ahead of time. And then, of course, we'll have the Christmas Carol thing again, where you can take, it's got to be a public domain carol. So do your Google searches, look for a public domain carol. You can write a reharm of that carol, or you can write your own. And it doesn't have to be religious in the slightest. You can just write about your favorite feelings of what you like about winter if you want. So that's kind of the way it's going to go. Whether there will be prizes or not, I don't know. That's yet to be confirmed. But the point here I'm trying to make is don't make the lack of prizes stop you from entering, okay? Because the point of entering is to complete music. And for everybody to listen to everybody else's music, and for everybody to have input onto everybody's music as well. So that's how the challenges are going to go going forward. Yeah, and the wankers in Edinburgh claimed they are the centre of the world as well. Yeah, it's because they've come from Edinburgh, Scotland, mate. That's why. All right, so JW has a question, and we got Just Bob asking a question as well. So let's take the first one first, which is JW's one, which is bebop scale. Can you explain? Bebop scale is less complicated than you think. It's really basically just a dominant scale. So what is it? What is a dominant scale? Well, instead of having the natural 7, which you would normally have, so let's take a C major scale. The dominant scale flattens this 7. Okay? And the bebop scale basically has the flat 7. It's essentially, it really is just another name for the dominant scale. Okay? But the thing with the bebop scale is it gives you the option to add other notes like the blue third as a passing note. Okay? So you can add that blue third in as an extra note. Okay? So that's basically what the bebop scale is. It's not really a particularly complicated scale. It sounds complicated because it's got the word bebop in front of it, and when anybody thinks of bebop, they think of weird, disjointed, angular melodies played at a bewildering speed with really highly complicated chord changes. And whilst that is true, the scales derived from those chord changes tend to be quite straightforward, for the reason that for for the simple reason that the chord changes fly by so fast, particularly if you're playing something really up-tempo, like Cherokee, for example, or anything that's based on the I Got Rhythm chord changes. The chord changes can be flying by so fast, you don't have much time to think about scales. So you think about patterns. So when I'm improvising on a set of chord changes, I tend to think in 5-note patterns that are derived either from the chord tones or from the pentatonic scale that's related to that chord. So, for example, if I'm using C7 as my chord, then I'm either going to use that bebop scale that we talked about, which is basically the dominant scale. But that's a lot of notes that I've got to get in if I'm only on that chord for less than a second. So I will tend to think in 5-note patterns, pentatonic patterns. Because, that can be done really, really quickly. And then, of course, you can add in a blue third as well to that scale. Okay, which gives you kind of a little bit more of a bluesy kind of sound. So I tend to improvise on pentatonic patterns based on whatever chord I'm on. So if I'm on that C7, like I say, and then I will use chromatic passing tones. I'll use chord tones. So there's my C7 chord. I can do a chromatic enclosure based on each one of those chord tones. So I can go basically, there's my chromatic enclosure around the root. So basically it's the note above, the note below, the note itself. It's basically a modern adaptation of a classical period turn, or mordant, which is basically where you're playing the note above, the note below, the note itself. Now, a classical turn is a little bit more straightforward. It's more like this. Okay, so da 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 da, note above, note itself, note below, note itself. Okay, but when we're doing a chromatic enclosure, it tends to be note itself, note above, note below, note itself. Okay, so I can do that, and then I can do the one where the third of the chord is the target. And so again, I'll go, and that leads me into the next chord, which would be F7. So if I was going C7 to F, and then you can do the same around the fifth as well. Note above, note itself, note below. Okay, so you got those are called chromatic enclosures, and then you can basically link those together using, you can do it chromatically. Or you can do it diatonically as well. And then And then just arpeggios coming back down. So that's basically just G7, F7, back to C again. So those are the kind of things I tend to think about, is pentatonic patterns and then enclosures based on the target notes of chord tones. And then using a little linking passing note there to get me back onto the one again. So there's a whole bunch of different ways in which you can approach the bebop scale and make it, basically you are taking the bebop scale and then applying some dressing up to it with enclosures. To make it sound much more interesting. So that's the bebop scale. Not brilliantly demonstrated by me, but that's basically how I think of it. I think of it as pentatonic patterns, enclosures around chord tones, and then, scale tones as well. Okay, Just Bob says, when a guitarist is playing a microtonal guitar neck, has extra frets for those in-between notes, how do you accompany those notes with a piano or synth? Well, if your piano is not a microtonal piano, it's going to sound a little bit weird. Because the microtones are going to obviously be in between each of the semitones on the piano. So it's going to sound odd. And it's going to make that guitar sound a little bit weird. It's kind of like if you play a fretless guitar, like my friend Sinan plays amazing fretless guitar. And he's a Turkish musician, so he has a lot of that Turkish language, melodic and harmonic language that's embedded in his playing. He's a really fabulous guitar player. He plays rock, he plays jazz, he plays funk, he plays fusion, but everything he plays has that somewhat Turkish sound to it, and it sounds fabulous. And because of that Turkish, Mediterranean, Middle Eastern kind of sound, there are kind of notes between notes. And they can work in a diatonic context, a Western diatonic context. But again, you've just got to be aware that those notes that are in between the notes, those microtonal notes, are going to sound a little odd. They're going to sound very, very tense against the strict Western tonal, equal temperament, diatonic, chromatic, 12-tone chromatic system. So you have to think carefully about who's doing what and when and how you resolve those tensions of those microtones. Because essentially, those microtones are in the, the 12-tone equal temperament system, those are going to be tension points. And so you are going to want to handle those with care. You can do it. It's not going to be easy to do, but it's possible to do. Brett says, for me, every day is Halloween, but until I know the parameters only, then can I gather ideas. Okay, well, so you're preparing for that the whole year round. Awesome. JW says, you can upload a song, we have to convert to a different style. Yeah, we could do that. Brett says, I just hope I don't lose to a mixing decision. Yeah, the songwriting challenges, they're not about mixing. So unless there is a mixing challenge, they're not really about the mixing. Brett says, so for the Christmas challenge, I have to find a way to write a song about hockey season. You can write a song about the hockey season. That's totally fine to do that. Because, maybe that's what winter means to you. Winter means hockey, and that's cool. Stephen says, is there an Arabian scale? There are multiple Arabian scales because there is an entire tonal system that the Arabian area, the Orient and the Middle East, when the Orient and the Middle East kind of come together, and the two cultures and the two musical melting pots come together, you get this wonderful infusion of music. But they don't conform to Western tonal systems. So there are several Arabian scales. John Coltrane played a few of those Arabian scales on oh, blast it, what's the really, really massive long work that he wrote? I've forgotten the title of it. It'll come back to me. But anyway, he made use of Arabian scales quite a bit because he was kind of studying Indian and African and Arabian tonal music to basically explore it and see if he could bring it into, the jazz music that he was making. So yes, there are lots of Arabian scales. There's an entirely different tonal system to spend time developing. But if you want to go after at least a hint of that Arabian kind of sound, you can use the scale that's based on E to E. So you get that nice flat 9 kind of sound there. So you can get that kind of thing going, where your tonal system would be based around like an F major 7 over E. Okay, so you could certainly develop something out of that Phrygian scale. You can also use the Phrygian with the raised sixth as well, which is where you go. That's a nice scale. You can also go with this raised fourth as well. So you could do you could take that mode, you could raise the 4 and raise the 6 as well. So you could go and have that as your scale, which kind of gives you a little bit of that Arabian flavor. And it's definitely weird. Brett says Lydian dominant can give that Arabian sound. Yes, it can. Hexatonic versions of harmonic minor also gives that flavor. Yes. So there's another thing that I've talked about quite a bit, which is a little bit more of an advanced technique. And certainly if you want to get into 12-note row music, like the music of Weber and Berg and Schoenberg, which if you've never listened to that music, it will just sound weird. It will just sound weird and may even sound unpleasant to your ears. And you may want to throw the record player or the MP3 player or whatever you're listening to it on out of the window because it just doesn't compute. So what is the 12-note row system? The 12-note row system is basically where you have 12 tones for your scale, and everything that you write is based off of those 12 notes. Here's the rule. The rule is each one of those tones in your 12-note row must bear no relationship to each other at all. So you have to avoid every tonal relationship between one tone and the next one. It is almost impossible to do, but it's not impossible. Can be done. But you need to avoid kind of regular tonal relationships. So you need to avoid a major third, minor third, fourths, fifths, sixths. Those kind of things are out of bounds. Major sevenths, those kind of things are all out of bounds. So you need to find notes that are not related to each other. And they can be in broadly any octave. But it works best if you start with a 1-octave 12-tone row. And then you basically make your piece of music out of that. And then that brings you to the second rule, which is when you played a note, you cannot repeat that note until all the other 11 remaining notes in your row have been played. Then you can play it again. So there's a whole bunch, there's like rules like those that make making that music a little bit more kind of interesting. And so the idea is you make rhythmic cells and rhythmic figures out of your music, because the melody is going to be quite angular because nothing relates to each other. And then the same with chords. Your chords are going to be based out of your tone row. It can be very interesting to do. My very first foray into this was with a piece that that I actually called Shafts. And the idea of it, when I called it Shafts, was where I grew up in the UK. I grew up in the far southwest of the UK, in the county of Cornwall. I spent some of my childhood there. Probably from about the age of 8 or 9. I lived in Cornwall until 18. So I was there for like 9.5 years. In the county of Cornwall was the largest tin and copper mining region in the world. At its peak, there were 450 tin and copper mines in the whole county. So this means that there were lots of mine workings and there were lots of mine shafts. And so I took this idea from basically looking down through one of these shafts of a disused mine that had never been capped. And the sun was at a particular angle where the light was shining down part of the shaft, and then the remaining part of the shaft was in darkness. So and the shadows it created were kind of a little bit weird. So to get to that, I decided to make my piece of music out of the diminished whole tone scale. So it's basically the whole tone scale, but it has a flat 2 and a flat 3, also known as the altered scale. Okay? And so I based my entire piece out of that. So all of the harmony, all of the melody for the piece was based around that. And it was for a small chamber group. So I had 2 clarinets, 2 flutes, a piano, and some percussion. And that was it. No bass instruments. And the idea was I was just trying to recreate the atmosphere of what I saw in that mine shaft. So kind of a little bit spooky. And then what I did was I tried to avoid, kind of normal natural relationships between notes in the melody. Worked out kind of well, actually. So that's a little aside about 12-note row systems and building music out of scales and how you can make a piece of music. I mean, we've done this with the B-Locrian, and we've done this with the Mixolydian and a couple of other modes that I've got you guys into, but you can really dive into it. And so one other thing you can do, and I get to this because of Brett's comment there about hexatonic scales. So hexatones is basically where you take 6 tones from one scale and 6 tones of another scale, and you put them together to make a new scale. So you can get to they can also be called hexachords, and so you can get to some really interesting sounds by combining like a C minor melodic hexachord with, I don't know, an A flat a melodic minor hexachord, like maybe the first or the second half of that scale, the second 6 notes of that scale. Put them together and you're making a new scale. And we call this hexachordal, so 2 hexachords combined together, hexachordal combinatoriality. It's combining these two hexachords. And I'm just watching the replay of me doing this. It looks weird. So it's another way you can create music basically using different scales, even ones that don't exist, and you're just basically creating them out of nothing. And you can get some very interesting sounds. Some of them sound a little bit Arabian, some of them sound definitely weird. Why and when did we shift from 435 hertz to 440? That's a great question. A little bit of music history involved here. So, throughout the Baroque, the Classical, and even into the kind of middle Romantic period, there was not really a massive agreement upon tuning. Equal temperament had already been settled. Equal temperament was settled during the latter part of the Baroque period and much celebrated by Johann Sebastian Bach in his 48 Preludes and Fugues. Why 48? Because there was a prelude and fugue in all of the 12 major keys and all of the 12 minor keys. 24 times 2, 48. So 48 Preludes and Fugues. Worth checking out, by the way. And that celebrated equal temperament. But how tuning should work within that context, within that framework, had never really been settled. So, the predominant idea for tuning in Europe was 435. So A, which is this A here, should equal 435 hertz. And for most of the classical, most of the Baroque period, most of the classical, most of the Romantic period, it did. However, in the United States, they had another idea based on some more sophisticated mathematics about the harmonic series. And they came to the idea that for the most well-rounded sounding music in any of the major or minor keys, for all instruments of the orchestra, the best option was to tune the A from 435 up to 440. Now, there is a little bit of compromise involved here. It is the best way. It is definitely the best option because it means that your entire orchestra of the Romantic period and beyond, which basically means you've got 100 to 150 musicians all playing their instruments together at the same time in all 12 major and all 12 minor keys, using the full range of their instruments. Some of those instruments predate equal temperament and therefore have all kinds of keys and all kinds of techniques to overcome the inherent intonation problems. You got to bear all of these things in mind. And so in the United States, they did bear all of these things in mind. They looked at all of the woodwind instruments. They looked at all of the brass instruments. And they said, you know what? Bearing in mind the inherent issues with some of these old instruments that predate equal temperament, such as French horns, clarinets, oboes, all of those instruments, they completely predate equal temperament ever having existed. Rather than change how those instruments fundamentally work, they said what we will do is we will develop extra keys that can go onto these instruments, and we will teach woodwind players and brass players how to compensate for intonation problems that those instruments have, especially in certain keys. So, for example, on the trumpet, the standard trumpet, it has 3 valves, but it also has a little ring slider you may have seen. So if the trumpet player is using the 3 valves like this, with the other hand, they have their finger in this little ring slider. And this little ring slider actually operates a fourth valve. And what that does is they slide that to correct for the intonation of the instrument in certain keys and in certain registers of the instrument. French horn players will push their fist inside the bell of the instrument a little further, and they will use their fist to correct the intonation there. Clarinet players will half hole, which basically means they'll cover half the hole with their fingers. And they've also got a whole bunch of extra side keys that they can also use in combination, and they can also bend the note with their lips as well, and they can bite on the reed as well to do the same thing. So, given all of those things, all of those methods for overcoming the shortcomings of equal temperament, which is a great system, which is why it is perpetuated for all of these centuries, the harmonic series is unfortunately out of tune with itself. And this is how sound works. This is nothing that anybody can fix. This is just how sound works. So, the lower harmonics below the fundamental tend to be flat. The upper harmonics, the higher those harmonics go above the fundamental tone, become sharper. And so all of these overtones make up the fundamental tone that we hear. So if I was to get my trumpet out, which I'm not going to do because it's nearly 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was to play you a concert B flat, you would hear the B flat as the fundamental B flat as the loudest note, but below that there is a fifth. Above that there is a fourth, another fourth, another fourth, another fourth, another third, another fourth, another fourth, another third, another third, another third. These are all harmonics above those notes. Those upper harmonics are sharp. Those intervals between those notes are slightly wider than they should be. Equal temperament doesn't fix the harmonic series. All it does is mean that an instrument can, groups of instruments can now play together in any key because there are no intonation problems. Because everything's been evened out. So particularly with keyboards, fixes the problems with the bottom note of the piano, the upper note of the piano, the upper parts of the piano, and organs and harpsichords and clavichords and all of those keyboard instruments. It evens that out. So now the distance between a C and a C sharp down there is exactly the same as there. So the whole thing's evened out. So once equal temperament had been sorted, they then had to agree on a fundamental tuning for everything, particularly for whole orchestras to play together. And so I think in Europe, it was either 435 or 438, which was the prevailing. In Germany, I think it was 415. So there were several different tunings. And basically the problem that you had was if you had German musicians, English musicians, and American musicians, and they all wanted to play together in the same orchestra, if they all had this different idea of what tuning they should play in, it's not going to sound great because everybody's going to be slightly out with each other. There are going to be intonation problems. So they had to agree on something that was universal. And eventually they did. It took until, I think, 1920 to resolve. But we set on A equals 440 hertz. And since then, every instrument, modern instrument, has been designed around that philosophy of A equals 440. And it means that the vast majority of overtones and things like that, those issues are less of an issue. But all that's happened really is those upper harmonics that I talked about, because they are naturally slightly wider and at the bottom they're slightly smaller. What they did when we moved to 440 and everything moved to 440, it just meant that those kind of got evened out. The problem that you have now is that you have certain registers of certain instruments sounding brighter than others, and certain registers from other instruments sounding darker than others. And that's all because of the harmonic series, which is how sound works. Sound is the harmonic series. So that's kind of like the science of sound, is how, pressure waves, air pressure waves move when sound is introduced. So my speaking to you into this microphone, you're hearing my fundamental tone of my voice, but you're also hearing all of those upper and lower harmonics as well. The thing is, a lot of those you're not really going to hear very, very clearly, and you're hardly going to pick them out. However, if you ran my voice through an oscilloscope, you would see them on the oscilloscope. But they would just be very, very, very quiet. And my voice is predominantly around a certain register. And so those particular sounds are the ones that come through the strongest. Those are called fundamental tones. So it was a standardization of sound, correct. And the idea, just like equal temperament was a standardization, it was a way of making everybody being able to play together in all the keys. Because when you go back to the Baroque period, before equal temperament, so like the late medieval and the early Baroque period, there was no standardization. So if you were a harpsichord player or a clavichord player and you wanted to play with your violin friend, you could by and largely play, but there would be certain keys where it wouldn't work. There would be tuning problems. And you would find that if you were playing a C major chord, for an example, the melody note was your violin was playing was an E above that, you would find that was actually a sharp E, and it wouldn't sound good. So there were certain keys that you couldn't play in. And there were certain keys, therefore, you couldn't write in for certain instrumentations. So as the orchestra grew from just being a small little chamber group into, multiple clarinets, multiple oboes, multiple bassoons, trumpets, French horns, trombones, and, multiple violins, violas, cellos, double basses a little bit later on into the classical period. And then we start introducing timpani in the late Baroque, early classical period. And then we start adding other percussion there, tubular bells, side drum, cymbals, bass drum, ratchets, all sorts of things. And then by the time you get to Mahler, by the time you get to Beethoven, they're adding guns to the percussion section. Thank God for the Second Amendment, right? And so, all sorts of other things like water gongs, where you strike the gong and then you lower it into a bowl of water, and the vibrations of the gong affect the water and it makes an amazing sound. Stuff like that, But it all started from little chamber groups in the medieval period. And so in order to get 120 people playing completely in tune with each other in any key, you had to standardize things. Unfortunately, as we standardize things, you have to compromise, right? You have to compromise. So you have to invent ways to get around the intonation problems. So there you go. It's a great question, Bob. It really is. And there's a lot of study that you can do on the subject. I have done a lot of study on the subject. In fact, I did a whole lecture series at university on the subject of tuning, equal temperament, and why for 32, which is this so-called psychic tuning, that people talk about. You know, new agey people talk about 432 being the perfect vibration and all sorts of bollocks like that. And really, it is just bollocks. Adam Neely has done a brilliant video essay on the subject, and it's fantastic, based in real proper musicological research. And like I said, I did a whole series where I covered why 432 is bad and how we got from 435 and 415 to 440 and equal temperament and all of that. I did that as part of a music history lecture series maybe 20 years ago. But it's good stuff. And it's good to dive deep into that kind of stuff so that we can figure out how we got to where we are today. All right. Great question to finish with. So, low numbers tonight, and that's my fault. That's because I decided to advertise the show pretty much 10 minutes before. That's on me. Sorry about that. So, we will be back here next week on Wednesday. No Sunday Night Live, okay? Spread the word that there is no Sunday Night Live to this coming weekend. But I will be back for a Wednesday show. If you have questions and you are hopefully thinking about questions for next week, you can email them. If you kind of think of the question, you go, hey, I would love this to be asked at the start of the show to kick things off. Then email me a question, especially if it's got a bunch of detail. I like detailed questions. Detailed questions are great. But if you want a detailed answer, we can start the show with that subject. Email me. You can go to the web address at the bottom of the screen there, jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, hit contact us, and put the subject, Songwriting Simplified question, and, whack all of that in there, stick your question in there, send that to me, and we'll start the show with next week with those questions. And also, hold on to your questions, get them in the chat as well. And that way we'll have a whole bunch of great questions. Thank you again for the great questions, guys. And I will see you on Wednesday next week. Have a great one, everybody. Have a great weekend. I will miss you all. Take care. Good night.